Welcome. Bienvenue to Focus on French Cinema 2023, the 18th edition of the Best of Contemporary French and Francophone Film presented by the Alliance Française of Greenwich. My name is Renee Ketchum, and I'm the Managing Director of Focus on French Cinema, FFC. Today, we are joined by Gail Coveney, co-president of the Alliance Française of Greenwich, Focus on French Cinema Director of Programming, Joe Myers, Marie-Josée Duquette, and Laurent Allaire, the producer of the FFC premiere, Niagara, that will be featuring a focus on French cinema this year. First, I would like to introduce the sponsor of the Focus on French Cinema screening of Niagara, Marie-Josée Duquette. Marie-Josée is the attachée à la culture et aux affaires francophones et éducatifs. She's a cultural, francophone, and academic affairs attaché at the delegation of Quebec in Boston. So welcome, Marie-Josée.
Merci beaucoup, Renée. So I work for the Quebec government office in Boston, and we have an office since 1970. One of the Quebec government office in Boston mandate is to promote our culture with artists from Quebec in New England. And today is a great example of our partnership with the Focus on French Festival. I'm also pleased to introduce you to Laurent Allaire, producer of the film Niagara. Laurent Allaire started as an actor at 17 years old, with many important roles in Quebec cinema and television. Then transitioned to production at 29 years old. Laurent has produced more than 20 short films that have distinguished themselves both in Canada and internationally. He founded Chasseur Film in 2010, a film production company. His most recent film, Niagara by Guillaume Lambert, made more than $500,000 at the box office in fall of 2022. And he is 41 years old. Merci et bienvenue, Laurent.
Merci, Marie-Josée, vraiment. Merci. Good.
Laurent, this film is wonderful. And one of the things I really appreciate about it is it's impossible to describe. You have to see it, and people say, is it a comedy or is it a drama? And I say, well, it's both. It's a mixture of those two elements, which is one of my favorite mixtures. But it's also a movie with physical scope. I mean, we go on a road trip across a chunk of Canada. And I wondered, as a producer, because of the scale of the film, was this a particularly challenging movie for you to put together?
Yes, indeed. Yes, there's many ways. Actually, first question, I could go on for a couple of hours, but just to make it short, I'm a producer that believes a producer should be on the ground, technically, on every film. So on most of my feature film and short film, I do the line producing of my film. I have a team around me that helps me, but I usually do the line producing. That means that I'm on the ground. I make the deals with all the crews. I'll make sure every day that we, work in the parameters of our schedule, budget, etc. So again, this film was the budget was $2.4 million, but it's worth at least $3.5 million. So we have to be very creative. And I don't know what are your next question, but in being creative on a road trip, you didn't notice it, but we didn't go shoot in Niagara. It's mostly all VFX and stuff. So let's go step by step. But yes, it was a very creative way of putting it together for sure.
Did you really do the trip, or did you do it in a area that you could use to portray many different places? How did you pull that off?
But actually, again, I mean, we don't want to talk too much about that time of a pandemic, but it was shot in June 2021. So that was when we started the shoot. It was still the lockdown in Quebec. Ontario, mid-May, beginning of June, they went into full lockdown. So what we did is that we hired a team in Toronto that drove all the way to Niagara, and they did all the shots of all we see in Niagara. And we then went into a green screen, and we were
I
able
see.
to make all the shot in Niagara. But for the rest, I mean, everything that has to do with the houses, the neighborhood where the two girls lives in Oshawa. That's not in Niagara, but in Oshawa. That has been shot in east of Montreal. So we didn't go out of Quebec province for this shoot.
No, it's amazing the variety that you have visually in the film, and you would never guess that. I mean, the magic of filmmaking always impresses me, that you could pretend to be someplace and convince us that you're there.
And you're not. And it's the same with the vineyard. I mean, the vineyard wanted to respect exactly what kind of grapes and landscape there is in the Niagara. So we kind of did so many vineyards here in Quebec, and we find one that was similar to what we can expect in Niagara, and it was shot in Magog. So
It's amazing.
far from Niagara, yeah.
Now, I was poking around on the internet last night, reading some pieces about the film, and I was surprised. Is it true that your central actor, it's his first real acting job, that he's known as a comedian in Quebec?
Yeah, actually, François Pérusse is known as one of our funniest comedian. He's doing a lot of clips for the radio. He made many albums in the past. He had a short role character in the previous film of Guillaume Lambert called Les Scènes Fortuites. Actually, Niagara is my second feature film with Guillaume. The first one, he was doing the voiceover in the film, François Pérusse, and he had a little scene with him. But he's someone that really works a lot lonely, François Pérusse, because he's doing all his music, everything is doing in his own studio at his house. So he doesn't have many friends, he doesn't have many people around him. So he's got this he's very sensitive, he's very some kind of very vulnerable he's very quiet. So I don't know, Guillaume saw through François beautiful things, and he was sure that he could build a character around him. So as soon as we finished the first film of Guillaume, he went right away write the script of Niagara with François Pérusse in mind, and here we go.
Yeah, he was terrific, and he also fits together with the two other actors, where I really believe they were brothers.
Yeah, totally, yeah. It's a bit our Bill, what's his name? Bill Murray of Quebec.
Yes.
Bill Lost in Translation. What's his name?
Yeah, that's Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, exactly.
Yes,
So
yes.
He's got a bit the same type of human of Bill Murray. Yeah.
Very interesting. Now, as an observer from the outside, I mean, we look at films from all of the French-speaking countries every year for this festival, and this year it seemed to me, as an observer, the films we were looking at, that it was a good year for filmmaking in Quebec. How does it feel from your point of view?
I think a lot of production has been stopped by COVID. So we went into 2021, 2022 was a bit crazy in terms of production, because all the production that were stopped because of COVID went into the green light. So I think there's a kind of dynamism and a kind of desire of telling our story and go back to work and make films that gives some flavor to the films of 2022, 2023. Yeah.
You know, we are running at the moment, for the past 2 years, we've been running a hybrid festival where we have a public screening or two, and then most of the films are online because of COVID. And because in this country, until recently, the audience had not returned to theaters, especially for specialized films and independent films. What is the theatrical situation like in Quebec?
Getting better every month, but still, I think it's for everyone that plus 55 years old, they changed their habit the last couple of years. So instead of going to the theater on the weekend, they go play card, whatever what they do. But I mean, the first, what we used to expect in terms of entrance for theater, it's really low comparative to before, for sure. But I'm confident that it will go better in the next year. But it takes a couple of years, I think, to bring back all the people. Box office films or teenager films, I mean, they're doing pretty good, but everything that has to do with cinema d'auteur or more niche film, it's a bit hard.
I mean, it's out of my power and probably out of your power too, but I think that the distributors are going to have to put a longer window between theatrical and streaming, or people will just say, I can wait at home a month or 6 weeks. I think that's one of the problems, is we need to support theatrical from the business side too, and encourage people to see them while they're running first run in theaters.
I agree completely. And I mean, I think theater works still very much for like a Top Gun, where in theater you live quite a hell of an experience with all the flights and stuff. So any film that you have the big experience of being on the big screen, and the sound is better, but you can have this a bit at home. So is this kind of film d'auteur? I have a little bit of problem right now. So again, I think the best way to make a film go for a long time in theater, and that's a strategy that we put forward with the distributor, is just, instead of going out in 50 theaters, we better go out in maybe 10 theaters that we really work hard on each theater. Because again, at the end of the day, the way that they do the calculation, it's how many screens, how many spectators at the end, and then they do the calculation. If it doesn't go into the numbers that they wish, the movie is out. So again, we better have less screens, but work pretty hard those screens, and hope that the word will pass around the viewers and say, please go see this film, it's pretty good, and then we can keep on being on the theater for many weeks.
People do forget that that's the way movies were released 30, 40 years ago. They would start just in major cities and then slowly. In fact, I read a story about John Cassavetes where he personally took the films from city to city, and they would only play one theater, but they would generate a lot of attention.
Exactly. And again, I mean, I think we're quite lucky in Quebec. There is France, there is Italy, that has a bit the same structure, that government finance production, film production, which it's a reality where we have to go through a committee, and some movies never get made because the committee doesn't give the green light, etc. But still, there's no obligation of, technically, we want to bring back money to the government, but there's no obligation compared to the US or in the UK, where you need, there's no government money to fund a film. So technically, you need to have a name, a genre, and then you know exactly what will be the box office at the end of the day, so you can raise that amount of money. So my point here is that the risky part with the platform, Netflix or Amazon, is just their license are so low that and their license, it's for 2 years, 3 years. So you got to wait many years before you're able to sell back to another platform or stuff. So again, my point here is that theater, it's so important, because if you go in private investment, private equity, or you go with the government, you need those revenue from the theater, because it's not by selling to a TV or a platform that you will be able to pay back the investment of the film. So it's a tricky one there. It's a tricky one. Yeah.
And in fact, I read somewhere that the producers of the James Bond film were approached to sell that to streaming, back in 2020. But they literally said, we can't even begin to make our budget if we do that. We have to wait until the theaters are open. And indeed, they opened and the film did, so I understand the bind you folks are in, really.
And it's the same reality with what is it? This big Marvel film they did. What was it, a couple of years ago? And they not even bring it back. They never bring the film to the theater, because they knew that they were not able to maybe make back the money. So they just put it on the shelves, and it's like it's a movie. It's a lost money. So whatever. It's What was this movie again? I'll get back to you about that.
Okay. Now, in terms of your financing and budgeting a film in Quebec, do you have to do it so that theoretically the movie can make a profit just in Quebec?
Hopefully, we all wish for that, but the market is pretty small in Quebec, and our film for France, I mean, we have to double it and etc. So, and there's not such a big market in France, so technically, I don't want to be negative here, but we're talking maybe about 3 or 4 films in the whole history of the Canadian cinema that were able to go all the way up to pay back all the investment. So we wish for it for sure, but it's a bit hard.
One of the things I love about this movie is that it is a Canadian film. It's Canadian characters, it's Canadian setting, and sometimes I feel that some people working in countries worry too much about appealing to audiences outside of that country by sort of blanding the story down. But from my point of view, I think the more your film represents your country and your society, the more interesting it is to people outside.
I agree. Again, I think there is this appealing of doing this festival circuit as much as possible with a film. So you know, my philosophy and the way that I work in development my films, it's mostly I get funded by government of Quebec and Canada. So hopefully my film will be most of the viewers will be from the country where the movie is financed. So I never forget the audience that we have here. I'm trying to always bring project to the institution where there is really a real appeal for viewers in Canada. If it works outside of the frontier and I mean the borders, and we can travel with it and make great film festival, good. But there is, I think, many directors and producers that are mostly worrying about making a film that will go to Cannes or Sundance or Berlin. And this, from my point of view, is a bit of a mistake because you forget your viewers in your country, plus you make kind of a recipient of a film where when so many are doing the same that you don't even get to get selected often.
And we looked at a Canadian film that I won't mention, but one of the problems for us was that it was set in Los Angeles, even though it was filmed in Quebec. And it would have been tough for us to program it as a film from Quebec because it didn't seem to be from Quebec. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a challenge too. Not that I want your filmmakers in Quebec to be limited to settings, film all your films in Quebec, but it was fascinating to deal with that movie because it was a good movie, but we felt it didn't represent Quebec.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. Now your resume is really interesting as far as being an actor as well as a producer. Are you still acting?
Sometimes, but not much. Not much. No. I love acting, but not many characters that are appealing, and not that much time anymore to act either.
How did you make that transition? How did you get into producing films from acting?
Long story short, I don't like to be waiting on the phone to ring, and I love creation and I love business. I had always some business since I'm pretty young on the side, and so that desire of having a business and being into the creation and being part of a project and bring to life. I think it takes many years to become a producer. I think I've been producing since 2010, but I think, to be honest, I'm a producer since maybe 2018, 2017, because it's not because you put together a team and you make a film with $500 that, even though you deal the budget and you do the distribution, that you're a producer. It takes many more years to learn. It's a craft that you learn through the years. So, but honestly, I mean, it's a dream come true to be able to produce film and develop film, and now I'm entering in the years where I produce enough films, so my credibility is there. I have good, I have good relation with many producers from abroad, from here in Canada, and I can really develop film in the line of the kind of film that I would like to, produce and work on in the next year. So it's much more like a ligne editoriale now that I can put forward than just take films and produce.
One of the challenges I have as a moviegoer, somebody who's seen movies for years, is nowadays it seems when I look at a movie, there are more producers than you can possibly count listed under various categories, and I know the Directors Guild is very rigid about who gets a director's credit on a movie, but sometimes I feel like you real producers get short shrift because a lot of other people are listed and the general public isn't sure who does what.
Sure, but it's hard to close a financial plan in our days. So technically, it's bringing people inside the project that will help to close a financial plan.
I see.
Regarding that, there's two ways of seeing it. In the way that it's sometimes easier to work like a $2.4 million budget, like with Niagara. It's a tough budget because people expect that you have money because you're over $2 million. But at the end, it's technically after $3 or $4 million, you have room, for overhead or whatever. You have great budget. But this $2 million budget, it's harder to deal than a $1 million budget because people know it with 1 million, it's a small budget, it's indie, let's do it more creative, So my point here is that I believe that money should be on the screen and a producer should be on the ground and make sure we find creative way to tell the story. And the cinematography is so important in our days. I think the focus should be put on acting, cinematography, and for sure the director with his vision, because cinema is a way of telling a story that you don't have in TV. So again, I think some movies need a higher budget, but in this case, you need to go real higher budget in the 4.5 and plus. So in that case, there might be many producers because we need to reach money. Yeah. But I'm not worried. I'm not scared to go into a $1 million budget if we can fit it. It's easier. It's a fast production and it's creative.
Well, you've hit on something that interests me because your movie. I have no idea what movies cost unless I read somewhere that it costs $200 million or whatever. But your movie tells a great story, has interesting characters, it looks good, and seeing that and you telling us that it cost a little over $2 million. I would think, as somebody in charge of a studio, for instance, that rather than put all of my money on one $200 million movie, I would finance 100 $2 million movies. But I guess that's not the way of the business world, is it?
That's the way for passionate people, but it's not the way for a business model. That's the thing here, I think. But I agree. I have the same thinking. Right now with the inflation, everything, there's a lot of thinking through the institution saying, shall we produce less film but bigger budget? I go, no, please, no. Produce more films with smaller budget, and we need to be creative as producer, director, and working through parameters, it can be very, very great for the project. Sometimes it brings to another level. It forces the creative to really go exactly to the essence of what we want to tell as a story maker, etc. So in Europe, technically, most of the films, it's a budget between 800,000 euros to 1.5 million euros. So go bigger than that. You really need to make sure that your film can reach a bigger audience and make revenues in the market. But again, the international market right now, it's so hard. It's so hard to sell a film anywhere in the world that all of this, or we go only with big studios film of $200 million, or we kind of try to see how we can make films. A great example is a movie that won years ago an Oscar called Blue Moon. What was it? It's story of whatever, the Oscar nominee. It's a movie that has been made for 400K years ago, and it reached $80 million on revenue box office. It's amazing. So it's one of a thousand that can reach that level, but still, I believe in smaller budget. Sometimes it's great.
Well, and I've read articles that say that the Hollywood emphasis on these $200 million in a way has eliminated these movies we saw in the 80s and 90s that were made for smaller budgets, but told stories that we could relate to, you know,
Yeah.
Woody Allen type movies, all of those domestic, ordinary people, whatever. And that, so that this emphasis on going for one huge winner has really cut down on our choices as moviegoers of the stories that we're seeing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. And let's say in New York, it's a good example, but it's pretty hard, you know, films in the market. So I see a lot of producers in New York making film for 250K, 300, but you know, it's congrats, beautiful. But at the end of the day, I mean, nobody really gets paid. So it's not a way of you know, it can't last like this for 10 years for producer either. So
right.
Yeah.
Did you have any problems when you made the transition of convincing people that you as an actor would be responsible with money?
Oh, good question. No, yeah, totally. I mean, no, because I bought a couple of houses in Montreal and I flipped them. So what I did is just I bought some construction company. I took a loan at the bank. I sold the houses. So it was exactly the same process as making a film. And technically, all the directors that I worked with at the beginning, they knew me as an actor, but I never develop a project with you know, wanting to put me into the movie. And it was really, and I didn't hack for like 6 years because I really wanted to become a producer and not like the producer that wants to produce film to put himself in the film. So, and after that, I mean, again, I think a producer, if you get a good administrative people in your company, I mean, it's the key. It's for any sort of company, if your administrative is tight and you give it very serious, you know, parameters, I mean, things can go wrong. And but for sure, it's as an actor, you know, you come in the set, everybody's taking care of you. As a producer, you come in the set, you take care of everyone. So that was mostly the thing that was the big difference here. Yeah.
One last thing, Laurent. What's next for you? Do you have finished films that are coming out, or are you working on something right now? What's going on?
Yes, I have 2 films coming out this spring. One's called Island Sunshine. It's a US project that I shot here in Quebec province. It's beautiful. It's shot in 35 millimeters as well. It's a beautiful film. And I have another film called Des Hommes la nuit, Men at Night, that was like going to theater in April. And I'm shooting a film this summer called Best Boy. It's a Canadian Montrealers director. And I'm developing many other projects, and I have a documentary going into production as well regarding the cooperative, the OBNL, and all the it's a documentary about putting up front all the économie sociale and other, because I think we need that's another subject, but we need in the future years to have many more companies that are sharing the profit in a different ways than just a bunch of actionaria that's taking all the money. And so we go to India, we go to Argentina, we go to Spain.
Oh, wow.
To really see all the models that exist of just how to make the community share all the profit from a big company.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with all of those, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, Laurent.
My pleasure. Anytime, for sure. It's great talking about that. So good. Thank you so much. Have a great festival, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.